Our today's session is an unplanned session because of the coronavirus. Today's topic will be career management and job search in light of COVID-19. As you can see, we do have an active chat. So if at any point you have questions that you feel I'm not yet answering, please feel free to chat and write something there. Let's just double check. I'd like to ask everyone to find the chat option and write something. Hello, good evening, just to make sure that everybody has found the chat and is able to ask. Oh, fantastic. Good. So you found it and that works as well. Fantastic. Good. Now, my name is Sandra Bichle. I founded Career Angels soon, 10 years ago. From 2002 until 2007, I actually had two different career paths. One was executive search while I was based in Budapest and then in Warsaw, recruiting for Central Eastern Europe. And my other career path, my second job, was working in sales and marketing while being based in Latin America and Mexico and in Ecuador. In 2010, I founded Career Angels because I felt that not only companies should have the representation on the job market, meaning the executive search and recruitment consulting firms. I felt that also the candidates, experienced managers and executives, should have a place to go to if they needed career advice or job search help. Over the last several years, more than 5,000 people have taken advantage of our services in Europe. Since 2014, I have been lecturing in business schools in the area of career management and job search. What's the most important bit here is that in the last 5 years, we have been collecting data of over 5,000 headhunters and almost 20,000 decision makers. What does that mean? When whatever I'll be sharing here with you today is not my opinion, my professional experience, my own professional experience as an ex-recruiter who worked, well, let's face it, 18 years ago. And the job market 18 years ago is very different from the job market, especially now. But what we do and the advice we give and the methodology we have developed over the years is by collecting data, collecting the response of what do executive search consultants actually respond to, which very often is something different than they share in their own advice. What do almost 20,000 CEOs, CMOs, CFOs react to? What works, what doesn't work? So it's not my experience shared, but it's basically the common denominator of almost 25,000 people across Europe. When it comes to the coronavirus, and I'll get right to it, we can see immediate effects on the job market. The moment we realized this would not be over within a week or two, so when we went from, oh, this might be a temporary quarantine to this might take a couple of months, we started tracking the number of published job ads on LinkedIn. Is it a perfect KPI? No, but it's one of them. So, and it's something very palpable and very immediate. So for a reference, we are currently in the middle of week 15 of the year. So week 13 was the week when we realized, okay, this is probably something permanent in terms of longer temporary. So in week 13, we decided to track the published LinkedIn job ads in those 18 countries, which are our main markets and our clients' main markets. We then checked again week 14, and you can see that in absolute numbers, and the absolute number that's important here is at the very bottom, within a week, 237,547 job ads disappeared from LinkedIn. This is a trend of minus 6.18%. Now, if we look at it sorted, Ukraine didn't seem to be affected, continued actually adding job ads. Czech Republic, Austria said, business as usual, we are not there yet. And you can see Romania minus 1.5%. Poland wasn't that bad either, 1.56%. But for example, Slovenia minus 22.40%. Now, how does it look now in week 15, which we're currently in? As compared to 2 weeks, we're now down by minus 393,723 job ads in 18 countries. That's almost minus 10%. And you can see, even if we look at, and I'll sort again, now almost all the countries are in red numbers. Slovenia again, minus 32%. Poland has dropped from the about third, fourth place, a bit more in the middle. Poland is now at minus 11.50%. Does that mean that all those job ads and all those potential jobs really completely disappeared? No. I said this is a simplified key performance indicator, meaning some of the jobs and recruitment processes indeed have been put on hold. Some of them have disappeared from LinkedIn, not because the recruitment process doesn't exist anymore, but because it was moved to cheaper local alternative. You have to remember that the local portals, as compared to LinkedIn, are very expensive. So if you are a major corporation who needs to, or even a middle-sized company who needs to cut costs immediately, one way to go about it is to cancel LinkedIn job ads because they're very expensive. They require a minimum marketing budget of 5 to 6 euro per job ad per location. So you can do the numbers. It's more preferable to pay somebody and to maintain, not to fire somebody, than to have up 10, 20, 30, 40 job ads. So the numbers don't mean that all of a sudden those jobs have actually disappeared, but part of it probably has shifted to local solutions like Pracuj.pl. They're offering 50, 60% off their current packages. So again, it's not a perfect KPI, but it is one indication of what is currently happening and how conservative some of the countries are in terms of their approach and how they see the next days develop. So among the immediate effects, as I mentioned, is that non-essential recruitment processes are indeed on hold, and non-essential is a definition that will differ from company to company. Non-essential for some companies can be an executive assistant, and in the next company, non-essential could be, or essential could actually mean that it's the executive assistant. So every company will define non-essential slightly differently because we don't know at what moment of their recruitment processes the coronavirus actually hits, meaning something that from a general market perspective doesn't seem as essential or non-essential could very well be essential for the company. So here again, I do not invite you to make broad assumptions because we don't know what we don't know about what's happening inside those companies. Immediate effects have been immediate layoffs, especially with small and medium-sized companies. We have spoken to CEOs and investors of startups, of funded startups, some of them even in mid-March or towards the end of March, decided to lay off anywhere between 50 and 70% of their personnel. What else? Whenever companies could, they decided to reduce salaries. And from what we have been able to gather, what the business owners or CEOs offered their employees to say, listen, I don't want to lay you off. Could we agree on a reduction of salaries? And that was usually about minus 20%. One effect of the coronavirus, and here again, I'll come back to the first bullet point, is non-essential recruitment processes are on hold. But that also means that essential recruitment processes continue, I'd say almost in the mode business as usual. What that means is that some recruiters actually complain about the lack of candidates because people are scared. If somebody has a job and they feel they're safe, they prefer not to change in those uncertain times, which to some extent can be good news for some that are active on the market because they will not be competing against passive candidates. And what definitely has happened, the trends that were already happening, there was definitely a trend in using technology in recruitment processes that has definitely been accelerated overnight. Everybody got a crash course in how to log on to Skype, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, etc., etc. So that is definitely here to stay, especially once companies realize how much money they're saving. So this is definitely something we all now have to get used to. And what that means is that from one day to another, practically overnight, we do not have an employee market anymore, but an employer's market. In other words, instead of competing now, instead of having a talent pool of, let's say, approximately 1,000, 2,000 active candidates, the employers can select and cherry pick from within 5,000 candidates. Good for the employers, not so good for the candidates. Let's move from immediate to short-term effects. The companies we have spoken to and also observing the recruitment processes our own clients are still being recruited for and interviewed for is restructuring processes, including digitalizations. So short-term effects are that companies, especially if they have been holding off on restructuring processes, this will definitely be sped up and they will start immediately to find more cost-effective solutions, flatten structures, speed up digitalization. We will definitely see more layoffs. Looking at the declarations we have so far collected, and here we have reached out to 300 board members across various industries, mostly within corporations. Everybody says and declares we should be fine until the end of April, May. But what happens afterwards? Plus, what about the smaller organizations that have already reacted? So more layoffs will definitely happen. I definitely suspect and predict a reduction of salaries for everybody, not only for a group of employees to protect their workplaces, but there definitely will be an adjustment of salaries for everybody. And what definitely also will happen from a recruiter's perspective, we will have an uneven talent pool. Supply and demand will shift completely, and which also means we will have a large portion of unskilled workers. And by unskilled, let's say not so skilled white collar employees that don't have yet the digital skills, analytical skills, IT tools, etc. And we will have a pool of people, those who will want to be looking for a job and want to find a job versus people who do have those skills and will either not be unemployed at all or will only be unemployed for a short time. And again, short-term effects, technology will penetrate everything much, much faster. Medium to long-term effect is obviously a recession. It currently doesn't really matter what you read. Everybody predicts it, with the difference in the only thing right now experts differ in is to say when will it actually start and how long will it take. Dominic asks how are the adjustment, the salaries will go in line to inflation and purchasing power. Dominic, I have no idea. If the experts can't agree on whether the recession will start in 1 month or half a year and how long it will take, I do believe everything and the whole dynamics of the market and by continuation the job market will depend on how fast we'll find a vaccine, a cure, good medication to handle the coronavirus. So I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer that question. But if I find the answer to it, I'll let you know. Now, what do you do with that information? Knowing what happens short term, immediately short term, medium to long term, how does that affect your job search, your career management? Should you look for a job? Should you put it on hold? What should you look for, etc.? So my goal here today is to give you a overview of our recommendations. Now, to start that overview, I want to start by looking at, first, I'd like to speak to those who do have a job and to those who don't. So I first want to start by talking briefly about those who do have a job, but do not fear that their job might be affected. So if you have the feeling your job will not be affected, you are safe, it's great. And it's a perfect moment to take the time to prepare a career plan and err on the side of caution and actually just to be on the safe side, update your CV and make sure you have a good LinkedIn profile. Why? And it does warm my heart, and I can't say it differently. It is something very emotional when we receive the responses, telephone calls and email responses from the various CEOs and CFOs that declare in their emails, we will fight for our local teams, we don't want to fire anybody, etc. We do believe them. We believe their declarations, but everybody has a CFO somewhere in headquarters that says, for example, the Polish market is a far too strong market. The Polish market has to carry 2 or 3 countries that are worse off financially. So, dear Polish CEO, please fire 20% of your staff by the end of May. And even if they truly believe that they want to protect their local staff, they might not really have an option to say no. So even if you believe you're safe, err on the side of caution, definitely. Now, there are a group of candidates who actually should continue job search. And those are the ones who have a very certain set of skills and competencies. Unique set of skills and competencies are so when we look at specialist level, anybody who has technical, analytical, digital technology skills, etc., you are relatively safe, and I'll say what I want to say in a bit. And the others are the managers who have interim experience, business process optimization, restructuring, change management, leadership, etc. This is your time to be looking for a job to actually also increase your salaries, your current salaries. But, and I can't stress that more, you need to learn to sell yourself really well. Currently, you will not be competing against 1,000 different candidates, but 5,000 different candidates. So having those skills doesn't guarantee a job or increasing your salary. So being able to communicate what it is that you have those restructuring experience, that you are a business added value for a company, being able to show that on your documents, on your CV, on your LinkedIn profile will be key to land a job. Christoph asks, you mentioned more local search for jobs and contracts, which is okay from various from the development point of view. Okay, Christoph, I think I'll get back to your question in a bit. I need to take a little bit more time to read it carefully. If you are a non-standard or average candidate, what does that mean? So when we look at from a recruitment perspective, either we have candidates that fit perfectly, that are so-called plug and play, meaning I plug them out from one organization, I plug them into another organization, and within 48 hours, they simply do their job and they perform. Now, if you're a non-standard candidate, or if you are average, meaning you don't have all those digital skills yet, you don't speak, your English is not fluent, but only good or advanced, etc. You need to start immediately with upskilling or reskilling. Not in 2 months, not in half a year, but start immediately, even if you're safe. How do you reskill, upskill? I mean, I put it here very bluntly: reskill, upskill, or delete. Delete as a reaction of recruiters when they see that a profile doesn't fit or they don't really know where to put somebody in a recruitment process. They click delete when it comes in to their inbox. Reskilling, upskilling, highly recommended. Go onto udemy.com. Look for courses that help you improve your competencies. Now, there are two different things. One, Łukasz says, does the market say in which direction to up or reskill? Well, anything that is digital, technology, analytics, language skills. So look at your current profile, and here there are two very important things. One thing is, do I need those competencies? For example, if you are in traditional marketing and you don't really know the social media stuff or search engine optimization, then do a course in that. Doesn't mean that now a manager needs to know how to construct a Facebook campaign across 5 countries, because that is already something technical, but at least they need to know how to then manage a team who knows how to do that. So on the one hand, look at what you are actually missing. On the other hand, if you already have a competency, but you don't have evidence for that, meaning you have been managing a remote team and have been using certain IT tools, but you don't really have too many examples for that. I'm now actually spontaneously coming up with an example. It would make sense to do a course, even a short course, just to have an evidence on paper that you have actually taken a course in effective communication with a remote team or the remote leader of 2020. So again, summarizing, there are two types of confirming skills. One is that you're actually missing it and you need to add it. The other thing is a marketing perspective to make sure to have evidence and confirmation on the CV. There's a question from Facebook. Are there specific industries that should look for new employees because of the coronavirus? Well, when we looked at the declarations of the various companies, what we saw who is still recruiting and where it's business as usual and actually even increased is the pharma industry. And pharma industry, shared service centers, in a different, let's say, category, but anything that is logistics and couriers. And there was one more, but it slipped my mind. When it comes back, I'll tell you. IT technology will not make money. It is only a tool for other productive and making money. Exactly, Christoph. Beate says, can you analyze LinkedIn profile CV to assess what needs to be improved or developed? Yes, and I'll tell you, Beate, at the end how to get access to that. So when it comes to upskilling, reskilling, and this is very much something depending on your own profile. If you don't know, you can then reach out to me and I'll tell you if it's in your case upskill or reskill. So I highly recommend Udemy, especially as they're very user-friendly, giving discounts, etc. And the courses on there are really good. LinkedIn Learning, if you have a premium account, you already have access to that. If you do not have a premium account, open a premium account for free for 1 month as a test. And here, for example, you can see change management foundations. On the left-hand side of the slide, you see you can take courses, videos, you have full learning paths. If you finish it, you can actually then also upload it as a certificate to your LinkedIn profile. You can then say, do you want something beginner, intermediate, advanced? I can highly recommend it. LinkedIn Learning several years ago bought an online training company called Linda. The quality there is really, really good. Next, Coursera.org. This is very often free courses offered by, you can see here, digital transformation by the University of Virginia, digital transformation in financial services by the Copenhagen Business School, the Lund University, you have Harvard there, etc. You can take the courses. A lot of them are completely free of charge. Some of them offer a possibility to actually do a project, get a certificate, so you can add it nicely to your CV. And then you pay between, I believe, $100 and $200 or $300 US, depending on the type of university. And you do actually, it's not just that you pay and you get the certificate, you actually have to do the coursework and the project and interact with other students from the course. Then the MOOCs, the open, massive open online courses offered by very prestigious universities. Here, for example, strategic management course. Below you see the Berkeley Artificial Intelligence course, etc., entirely free of charge. Highly recommended. You find them and in your areas of interest. Why is it so important to take the time now to immediately upskill or reskill yourself? And I will explain that by showing you a graphic most recruiters will not like me for, but that's okay. So in case the graphics, the photo is not clear, the form is the requirements that a company has towards the candidates, and the blogs are the candidates. Because we have switched from an employee market to an employer market, they can really cherry pick their candidates. And cherry picking, they will look at when was the last time this person did a course? How up to date is their knowledge on digital marketing? How updated or how proficient are their English skills? Or how are their presentation skills? Have they ever held a webinar online? Do they know how to do that? Do they know, etc., etc.? So now really the companies will be able to cherry pick candidates because they will look for the absolute perfect fit, not only because they can, but because it will lower the risk of that person, of the candidate not performing. Okay, now let's look at those who are already looking for a job. Obviously, part of the things I've already shared are also for those already looking. Now, if you're already looking, I'll give you a rundown of the steps of the job search process. with the comments of what has changed between a month ago and now. So job search strategy, first step, define your goal. And here, even more than before, you need to be as precise and, I have to say, realistic as possible. And to put it blunt, especially if you are an average candidate, choose the path of the least resistance. This is not a moment to be super ambitious and look for the next career advancement unless you're a really good candidate. In other words, because again, a little bit in line with what I just showed you before, in English you say you compare apples to oranges. So if something doesn't quite fit, meaning if from a recruiter's perspective, and it doesn't matter if it's an internal or an external recruiter, if they want to hire an orange and there is a candidate who comes who is an apple, they will say, but why did you even apply? You are an apple. I want to recruit oranges. So, and this is also if you are let's say, HR manager, and a company wants to recruit let's say, HR specialist, senior HR specialist, and you know you're ready for the HR manager, and the job ad says we're looking for an HR manager. HR manager is the orange, HR senior specialist is the apple. They will say, but I said I want already somebody who knows how to manage. So, and that's again from a marketing perspective, if you're an apple and you know you are ready to be an orange, you need to disguise yourself, and you need to make sure that the person who reads your CV doesn't see the apple, but sees already almost a ready orange. I hope that makes sense. And this gets me to the second point, which is your unique selling proposition. You need to make sure and be super smart about how you position yourself on the job market, because you won't be competing against 1,000 people as usual, but 3,000 or 5,000. As of now, you need to have 2 different CVs and an optimized LinkedIn profile. 2 CVs meaning one for the human being who reads it and one for the applicant tracking systems, which I'll get to in a bit. And your LinkedIn profile needs to be optimized from 2 perspectives. 1, you need to write it for the human. 2, you need to write it for the LinkedIn algorithm. You need to make sure you have your career interests filled out. You have the skills in the skills section added that then correlate directly to the job as you're applying to. And you need to be using all 4 job hunting channels. So far, candidates were able and get away with only using 1 or 2. I don't think this is an option anymore. And don't get me wrong, I really hope that everything I'm saying is wrong. And in 2 weeks or even in a month, all of the 67 that we are here today will have a good laugh and say, oh, Sandra, do you remember you were painting the future so black? And this really is not necessary, and it wasn't necessary. I really hope I'm wrong. But in case I'm not, bear with me. I'll explain how the job channels now have changed. So when we look at the 4 job channels, we have speculative introduction, meaning contacting your direct boss directly, which has had a success rate in the last 3 years of 45%. Networking is 29%, executive search firms is 15% success rate, and job ads is 10.33%. Now, what's important with the online job ads, and this is why I said you need 2 CVs, you need to know how the applicant tracking system works. One website I can highly recommend is jobscan.co. They simulate they claim that their algorithm is based on the most common algorithm of the applicant tracking system, which is Taleo. And here you can see when you go on the website, on the left-hand side, you paste your resume, and on the right-hand side, the job description. So for example, on LinkedIn, or when you upload your CV to a database, before you actually send your CV, have the ATS match it, and then they will tell you, once you click scan, how much of a match from the software's perspective you are. and you will find very detailed tips on how to improve the CV so that the applicant tracking system, the software says, dear human recruiter, this candidate has minimum 75% match. You can get in touch with them. The next channel, headhunters. So far, we said it's enough to contact 30 to 40. Given the dynamics of the job markets, including that some of the major companies will actually turn to either away from headhunters or to recruiters that are simply cheaper. Let's put it again bluntly. So reaching out the top 30, 40 headhunters will not cut it. You will have to widen the scope to about 50 to 75 recruiters. You identify the consultant directly, you email them, you don't bombard them by LinkedIn, you can then send them an invite 2 or 3 weeks later, and you write to the point, meaning in the email you say, I am an Apple, and this is definition of Apple. Recruiters, especially now, they will not have the time to open your CV and start interpreting, is that now a HR business partner or an HR manager or an HR director? Who is this person? Oh, let's have a chat. No time for that. So you need to be super precise when communicating with them so they know which kind of box to put you in. When it comes to networking, you might remember last year, networking was on the second spot in terms of efficiency of the job hunting channels. And it was for the first time up to 35%, and the direct application was 39%. Especially to those who don't really like networking or using the network and your friends and family and current and former colleagues to find a job. It's not an option anymore. It's best to audit your network, prepare the strategies, come up with your different network strategies, execute the strategy, and make sure you don't make the most common mistakes, which is to be either too generic, too aggressive, not direct enough, make assumptions, be too broad. And by making assumptions, here a tip, and those are to those who do use the network or not. Very often, and that's one of the most common mistakes that we see, we assume that our friends, especially our close friends or people who we've worked with or we used to work with quite some time, we assume that they know what we're looking for. So then a lot of my clients send CVs to their friends, say, oh, attached my CV. If you know something, let me know. And very often that link is missing by helping them define not only if you know something, but if you know of a company who is looking for a sales manager with experience in partner channels, let me know. So this is one little detail that changes how much help how much productive help we can potentially get. Direct approach, contacting companies directly. You will find in all our materials that we usually recommend 60 to 90%. Right now, especially if you do not have financial security, that you cannot be looking for a job for 3 to 6 months and be easy peasy relaxed sitting on a balcony, you will have to target most probably 90 to 120 decision makers, meaning 90 to 120 companies for that channel to be effective. You identify your potential boss, important, don't go too high up or too low. You email them, and what's super important, not only do you say, hi, I'm an Apple, but I'm an Apple that if you, I know that the wording might now sound a bit weird, but if you eat me, like if you hire me, I'll be able to find cost savings, increase sales, digitize something, etc. So make sure, and this is part of what we said, the second step, meaning how you position yourself, your unique selling proposition. What is your business added value for your potential boss? And now I have final comments. If you don't have to change a job, don't change it unless it's an opportunity for you to advance. And to be on the safe side, if you're able to negotiate to have an employment contract without probation. Otherwise, I'd recommend play it safe, at least for now. Also, be flexible as to the type of engagement, especially if you will soon be unemployed or you are already unemployed. Be open to work on a project basis, freelancer, advisor, part time. A lot of companies, and again, talking about risk, we already have seen that happening. It started about 3 years ago when companies offered our unemployed CEO candidates advisory project to say, listen, I'll give you a project, we'll pay for it. And this for the company is a way to test if that person potentially will actually fit the organization. So definitely be open to working on a project basis. Again, it's better to be underemployed than completely unemployed. And let's fast forward 6 months, 9 months. So by the end of the year, a candidate with a job in the long run is a better candidate than one without a job. And now again, I don't want to discuss if this is right or wrong. This is a perception. On the job market, an employed candidate is perceived with a higher value than one without a job. Now, I'm not talking about the next 2 months. Everybody knows, and everybody who has, well, actually can look at the window knows the world is not the same again. So if you've lost a job in the last week, or you will do by the end of this month, here being unemployed will not influence how you are perceived in terms of value. But you need to take advantage of the time that is then still on your side, because being unemployed for 1 or 2 months because of the coronavirus will be fine, will be okay. But being unemployed for half a year, not anymore. I hope that makes sense. Thomas asks, what about changing inside an organization, like relocation to another country? Do you think that it is a good moment for this kind of change? Again, it depends. It depends on the type of organization, what kind of contract, is it a good strategy from your own career management perspective? So I would have to know more details. Feel free to email me with more details. I assume that this is about you or somebody close to you, and then we can have a conversation about that. Again, I can't highlight that enough. Upskill, reskill immediately. For some, and even if it sounds a bit clumsy, it's about learning the computer and all its tools. You will be surprised, and maybe you won't. Last week, I spoke to an executive search consultant who was, how should I put it? Very disappointed by her 2 shortlisted candidates who basically failed the last round interviews because they were not in person but online. One of the candidates was, it was probably her first online interview. She was so stressed, didn't listen, wouldn't stop talking, and they went back to the executive search consultant and said, why was she in the recruitment process? She does great in person, but the person I met online can't be compared to any of the feedback from the in-person interviews. The other candidate made a point of saying how well organized they were, how important details were, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, it kind of slipped her attention that in the background was a sink with dishes that weren't washed. And again, it's not about, I mean, we're all now working from home, so it's not about the fact that she was at home or sitting in the kitchen. Not everybody has the luxury for 2 working parents to have their own working space. That's not what it's about. It's about the awareness of how I communicate online. of an interview, because the online interviews are very different from the in-person interviews, because so many things change. The chemistry changes. You can't smell the other person. You can't shake hands. So people start paying attention to completely different things, which to a certain extent, the interviews become more objective to a certain extent, but also we pay attention to other things. In 2 weeks' time, my colleague Anna will be sharing with you the differences between online and offline interviews, and she will run you through every step of the online interviews and recruitment processes. I was talking to a peer of mine, meaning somebody who works, well, we don't consider each other competitors. We simply work in different market segments. She's an outplacement consultant, and she says she works she does outplacement services for employees of a very big corporation. And some of those employees have been offered outplacement services in January, in February, in March. And there were voluntary outplacement services, so they decided to take the opportunity to, exit the organization. Almost none of them have actually started the process, because they say, I have time until the end of the year. What's the hurry? Don't wait. Especially if the CV says that you worked somewhere until the end of May, June, March, February. No time to wait. Don't delay the plans, and especially if you still have to improve some of your competencies. Make a plan and stick to it. And of course, it's easy to say, look at the bright side, which I won't. But it is an opportunity to take control of your career, and you decide how to react to the event. If you go into panic mode, if you take it as an opportunity to say, okay, now I will finally brush up my German, I'll improve my English, I'll download Duolingo to get back to French. You decide whether to blame the market and say, oh, nobody wants to hire people who are over 50. Of course, if you're over 50 and you speak 2 languages perfectly and you are on top of technology and why wouldn't they hire you? So it's really, the whole thing is you as a candidate. If you need further help, we still have our cooperation with your business school. You have free access to CV reports. We can review your LinkedIn profiles. Not everybody feels comfortable asking questions in a public chat, especially if there is live streaming and broadcasting, which I completely understand. If you want to get in touch, send me an email, bichel.sandra@careerangels.eu, subject business school /selected item. If you are not associated with the business schools, but you have listened to this, we still want to help you. Please do get in touch. It's much more important for me that you get help and support than as opposed that you wouldn't get any. Krzysztof says, where do we get the presentation available? Let me speak to the business school, whether we'll make this available. Definitely you'll have the recording. Not sure yet about the entire presentation. I mentioned the next webinar is on April 22nd at 5. Anna in Polish will walk you through the differences of online and offline interviews and how to prepare for them most effectively or as productively as possible. And last but not least, our Q&A session. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them now. And I'll do my best when it comes to answering them. Olga, maybe there are any questions over Facebook? Either everybody is typing or everybody is digesting the information. Let's see. Okay, some people are already logging off. If you're logging off, then let me just put up the contact details for those who are still here, or before you want to log off. Dominic says you're already preparing the CVs for the review. Fine with me. Anna, you're very welcome. How much you think? Andre, that's a very good question. Andre asks, how much do you think will the average recruitment processes take now? That's a very good question. Right now, we have seen two different types of speeds. One is everything is accelerated, especially when it comes to the very essential roles, because nobody has to travel anywhere. Everybody is basically available. I don't want to say 24/7, but still. So some of our CEO and let's say C-level clients have had recruitment processes that would normally take 3 to 6 months reduced to basically 2 to 3 weeks. So essential recruitment processes, I can very much see them speeding up. For organizations who haven't yet really formulated a strategy how to navigate the coronavirus, I can see things slowing down, being put on hold because, well, they don't know yet. I don't think those recruitment processes will be entirely canceled, but simply put on hold or slightly delayed. And I think depending on the speed of the recruitment process, you'll be able to easily identify is this an essential or a non-essential role. I hope that answers your question, Andrzej. Machi asks, do you plan on having a seminar properly prepared LinkedIn profiles? Yes. Definitely have a look at the Talentry website of your business school. You can also track Career Angels on LinkedIn. Everything we do, you will see it published there. And again, I think we are in times now where we can openly say, if you get help, if you have access to a webinar, whether it's inside or outside the business school, just take the help and look for it. So we might have, for example, a scheduled LinkedIn profile session, let's say in May, but you can't wait until May, but you see that we organize something earlier, just go for it. Mache says, you mentioned people over 50. Is age very decisive in recruitment processes? Short answer, no. Being 50 plus, I've learned something new today from you. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Piotr. Have a nice evening. Beate, do you think that the virus will affect the financial industry? I was working for a private, now thinking, is it still place to work? Well, the financial industry, I would say, has definitely already been affected. Probably, well, one of my colleagues specializes in the financial industry. I'd be very happy to get to put you in touch with her. She has reached out to the various board members of the various banks, and some of them, because of the virus, have already decided to close, not temporarily, but to permanently close dozens, if not hundreds, of subsidiaries. So there will be a huge shift to digital, obviously. When it comes to private banking and wealth management, I don't know. I would say have a chat with my colleague Anna. Kasia says, thank you. I thank you as well. Let's see if there's any other question. Okay, Anna asks, do you think that jobs will require to travel as the world is changing? I actually had a very interesting, I had a very interesting conversation with one of my CEO clients. He is being interviewed for a regional CEO role, which has been accelerated. Now, we were actually wondering, and I don't have an answer for that, But we were wondering, how likely is it for an organization to hire a board member without ever having met them? You can't travel now, especially from and to certain countries. So how do you deal with it? And I don't think that any of the countries and companies have a ready answer for that. Of course, there will be much less traveling, but will it change completely? How much? I don't think we have the answers to that yet. I'd say time will tell over the next 2 to 3 months. Okay, as I can see, no more questions. What IT tools are fancy now to increase your value? It's not about only the IT tools, but overall an awareness of technology and digital. Just to give you one more example of how candidates, I don't want to use the word misbehave, but of how much they lack the awareness of IT tools. One of the candidates, a different candidate from one of the executive search consultants, they actually spent the entire interview, the candidate didn't know how to make the video call work. So, because they twisted something, so actually the CEO interviewing the candidate had to look like this the whole time, which tells me, okay, maybe they're very competent managers, but they have no clue on how the IT tools work. And I don't think that there's one specific or particular fancy. It's, do you know how your computer works? Do you know how to switch from one thing to another? Are you afraid of it, etc.? Okay, Beata shares her contact details publicly. Beata, if you don't mind, please send me an email to this to the email address that I've put on, because once we close this chat, I won't have access to it anymore. Wojciech says, let's agree this will be my last question that I'll answer. Wojciech asked, you said there should be 2 CVs and LinkedIn and 1 LinkedIn profile optimized according to LinkedIn and something else. Could you tell me more about it? I'm not sure what the something else was. Just to summarize, 1 CV is for the human being. So if you reach out directly to the business side, to the recruiters, if you apply to job ads or upload your CV to the database, it has to be prepared for the applicant tracking system so they can easily read the content on the CV. And those 2 CVs, I don't want to say they're opposites, but they don't look, they're like apples and oranges. There we go. And the LinkedIn profile, it's still 1 LinkedIn profile, but you need to make sure that the right keywords, that the profile summary, the beginning of the profile summary is written in an attractive way for the reader, so for the human being, that it shows your unique selling proposition, and then the keywords for the algorithm. Then you need to make sure to fill out the job seeker preferences. That's what you do in the settings. And at the very end, you have skills. Before you add the skills, research the job ads that you're applying to, and then make sure that the skills you have on your profile match with the skills that the majority of job ad posters and lists. I hope that now. Okay, fantastic, Wojciech. Thank you so much for today. Again, I hope I'm completely wrong and you will not need any of this. If you have your own personal questions, please do send me an email. I'll take my time. And if not me, I'll ask my colleagues to take their time to answer your questions, have the career consultations, look at your CVs, look at your LinkedIn profiles. We are here to help, so take advantage of that help. Thank you so much. And Olga and the business school, and obviously, and now the most important people nowadays, IT departments, thank you so much for organizing this today. And thank you so much for joining. And as Christoph already says, happy Easter in case we don't see each other. Please stay safe. Have a nice evening. Bye.